Welcome. You know, it's a fascinating thing to think about. How can different faiths, all centered on Jesus Christ, sometimes have beliefs that seem worlds apart? Today, we're going to dive deep into that question, focusing specifically on the core ideas of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to really understand what makes their view of the world so unique. Let's get right into it. And that's the big question, isn't it? If everyone agrees that Jesus Christ is the foundation, where do these really significant differences in doctrine come from? Well, that is exactly what we are going to unpack today. We're going to map out the key points of difference in a way that's super clear and easy to follow.
So, here's our roadmap. We're going to hit 6 key areas. We'll start with the idea of a restored foundation, then talk about God and human potential, check out the map for eternity, look at modern prophets and the idea of open scripture, explore the voluntary ministry, and finally wrap it all up with a path of progression.
First up, we've got to start with the most foundational difference of all. It's a unique take on Christian history that revolves around 2 key ideas: apostasy and restoration. Honestly, this is the starting point that everything else really flows from. Okay, check out this timeline. The key concept here is that middle period, the Great Apostasy. The belief in the Latter-day Saint faith is that after the original apostles died, the divine authority they held was actually lost from the earth. We're not just talking about things getting a little corrupted and needing a tune-up. This was seen as a complete break. So in this view, a reformation wasn't enough. What was needed was a full-blown restoration of that original authority, which they believe kicked off in the early 1800s. So what is this apostolic authority? It's seen as a very real, tangible power. It's the permission from God to do things in His name, like performing sacred ceremonies or ordinances, such as baptism. The core belief is that this specific authority vanished for a time, but has now been brought back, and that idea is the bedrock for all the other unique beliefs we're about to get into. All right, so now let's build on that foundation and look at our next point, the very nature of God and humanity's relationship to Him. This is another area where you see a pretty significant theological split. And this slide lays out the difference perfectly. On one hand, you have the traditional Trinitarian view, one God in 3 persons. On the other, Latter-day Saints believe in what they call the Godhead. That's 3 totally separate, distinct beings who are perfectly united in their purpose. And here's a really key distinction. They believe God the Father isn't just some mystical spirit, but an exalted being with a glorified physical body of flesh and bone. This famous phrase really captures a huge part of Latter-day Saint theology, this idea of our divine potential. It suggests that our life here isn't just about being saved. It's about starting a journey of eternal progression with the mind-blowing potential to eventually become more like our heavenly parents. Now, this idea of eternal progression, it's not a standalone concept. It fits into a much bigger cosmic map. So next, let's look at what's called the plan of salvation, which details our entire existence from before we were born to long, long after we die.
You see, according to this theology, our story didn't start at birth. It actually began way back in a premortal life, where we lived as spirits with God. And it was there that this foundational principle of moral agency, our freedom to choose, was established as a core law of the universe. It's the very reason we're here on Earth to begin with.
So life is seen as this continuous journey. We start in that premortal world, then we come to Earth to get a body and gain experience. After we die, the journey keeps going in a spirit world, which is a place of learning and preparation, all leading up to a final judgment and resurrection. And here's where the view of the afterlife really diverges. Instead of a binary heaven or hell outcome, Latter-day Saint doctrine teaches that there are 3 kingdoms, or degrees of glory: the celestial, the terrestrial, and the telestial. It's a multi-tiered structure that suggests a much more nuanced final outcome based on an individual's own choices and desires. So you're probably wondering, how is all of this known? Where does this information come from? Well, that brings us right to our 4th point, the belief that God didn't just stop talking to people after the Bible was written.
The crucial idea here is continuing revelation. It means that divine guidance is an ongoing thing. The belief is that God calls prophets and apostles today, just like He did in ancient times, to lead the church and reveal His will for us right now. So for members, guidance isn't just something you read in a history book, it's active and present.
And the biggest, most well-known product of this restored revelation is the Book of Mormon. It's considered scripture right alongside the Bible and is presented as a record of God's dealings with ancient people here in the Americas. It even includes this incredible account of the resurrected Jesus Christ visiting and teaching in the Western Hemisphere. This unique theology also leads to a really different organizational structure on the ground. So, Let's take a look at how local congregations are actually run. This is a massive practical difference. Unlike most denominations that have a paid, professional clergy who went to seminary, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints runs on a lay ministry.
So what that means is that the local leaders, the bishop who leads a congregation, or a stake president who oversees a whole group of them, are all volunteers. They don't get paid for their church service. They're balancing these huge responsibilities with their own careers and family lives, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. All right, let's pull all these different threads together. What's the ultimate point of the restored authority, this huge view of eternity, and the ongoing revelation? Well, it all culminates in what they call the path of progression.
This is the covenant path. It's basically a series of sacred commitments and ordinances, things like baptism and temple ceremonies, that are made possible because of that restored authority we talked about at the very beginning. It's seen as the specific route you can follow to keep progressing spiritually and ultimately return to live with God again.
And this brings us right back to the beginning. While salvation through Christ is absolutely a core belief, the ultimate goal is framed as something even bigger: eternal progression. Life isn't about reaching some final destination. It's about being on an endless journey of becoming, of learning and growing to fulfill that divine potential we touched on earlier.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If you truly believed that your journey of growth doesn't just stop at death, but continues on forever, how would that change the way you look at your challenges, your choices, and your purpose right here and right now? It's a pretty powerful idea to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.